Great achievement is usually born of great sacrifice and is never the result of selfishness. Napoleon Hill. We've all known someone who seems to excel at everything, but somehow they leave a wake of people behind them who feel used or unfulfilled. We see it at work. There's that person who crushes their goals, but destroys the team's morale to get there. We see it in our everyday life. That friend who always gets what they want, but only because they put their own desires ahead of everyone else's needs. But here's something worth thinking about. If someone achieves their goal, but damages the people around them to do it, is that really a win? Or did everyone else just pay the price for one person's ego? It's like keeping your yard clean by dumping all your trash into your neighbor's yards. Yeah, you might look good for a minute, but eventually the neighborhood will have a problem. We assume results speak for themselves, and it's easy to believe that if the numbers are there, everything else should be accepted. But maybe we're measuring the wrong thing. What if the highest performer is also the person reducing the performance and the confidence of everyone around them? That's the more difficult aspect to consider, because we generally give successful people the benefit of the doubt. We get so wrapped up on the output, but we rarely look at the costs on the people around us. We can forget that character and loyalty matter just as much as achievement. In fact, over the long haul, they matter a whole lot more. And I'd argue that one of the easiest mistakes we make is assuming that performance is easy to recognize. If we see someone who consistently seems to be achieving all their goals, it's natural to conclude that they're creating value. And on the surface, that's a reasonable assumption. Because after all, if they're producing results, how could they not be valuable? But production and value aren't always the same thing. Think about people you've worked with. Chances are you've known someone who seems to outwork almost everyone. They're always busy. They solve problems quickly. They push projects to completion. And if you look only at what they accomplish, you'd probably call them one of the strongest performers on the team. But the thing is, how did everyone else feel after working with them? It's our culture to count the wins, but we don't measure the repercussions. We celebrate what got finished, but we don't acknowledge the people who were pushed down or the teammates who began only doing the minimum because they were tired of being overlooked or steamrolled. Real value leaves something behind besides completed work. And maybe that's where we've unintentionally lowered the bar. Somewhere along the way, many organizations, and oftentimes ourselves personally, treat productivity as the only measurable. If the numbers look good, we rarely ask any other questions. The problem is, numbers only tell you what was or wasn't achieved, but they can't tell you the cost to the people involved. You can hit every objective and still leave those around you less confident and less willing to give their best the next time. And from a distance, that can look like success, but up close, it tells a lot different story. So maybe the better question is, are you making everyone around you better? Because if success comes at the expense of the people beside you, then what you're calling high performance may simply be high production. And then once you separate production from value, the next question gets a little more uncomfortable. How did the result actually get achieved? We tend to treat the outcome as the best part of the story, and there's a temptation to stop looking at the process. But the process is part of the result. If someone reaches the goal by taking the credit that wasn't theirs, withholding information that could help others, or creating unnecessary pressure on those around them, the finished product doesn't erase what happened along the way. It simply just makes it easier to overlook it. And granted, maybe the objective was achieved. But if the same result could have been reached without taking advantage of others, then the damage wasn't necessary. It was a choice. Now, this doesn't mean that we should avoid hard standards or have some pressure when the situation calls for it. Some work is demanding. Some decisions are going to disappoint those around you. And some expectations may not be immediately clear. The difference is whether the pressure serves the work or serves our ego. Because a person with integrity can be direct without being demeaning. They can hold somebody accountable without humiliating them. They can push for excellence without making everyone around them feel disposable. Yet the real test of character isn't whether you can produce when people agree with you. It's whether you can produce without using your success or the success as permission to mistreat others. Because the method eventually becomes part of your reputation. People may remember what you delivered, but they'll for sure remember whether working with you made them better or just more guarded. And another thing about success is that it doesn't automatically create quality connections. You can earn respect for what you do while losing trust for who you are. From the outside, everything will look like it's moving in the right direction. But then something subtle will begin to change. People will stop collaborating with you because they've learned it's safer not to share their ideas with you, or they become fearful about disagreeing with you. And that's a lonely place to be, especially if you don't recognize it. Because most people assume that loneliness comes from being isolated, but sometimes it comes from being surrounded by people who no longer feel connected to your success. And the irony to that is, high achievers are often the ones who value feedback the most. But if your behavior has unintentionally taught those around you that they don't matter and that disagreement isn't welcome, you've effectively built a wall around yourself, which is a dangerous place for you to be because growth depends on the truth of those around you. Our character impacts the quality of the relationships that surround our successes as well as our failures. And at the end of the day, people remember the person who challenged them, respected them, made them better, and left them feeling like they mattered. That's a different kind of success. And unlike titles or accomplishments, it's the kind that continues to grow long after the work is finished. And you have to remember that the cost of toxic behavior isn't usually paid by the person creating it. More often, it's paid by the people who care the most. Think about that coworker, the one who comes to work wanting to do a good job. They're prepared. They're dependable. They take pride in their work. They aren't overtly looking for recognition. They're simply trying to contribute. Now imagine that every one of their ideas is dismissed before it's considered. Every mistake is criticized, while their successes barely get acknowledged. Credit has a way of flowing upward, while blame has a way of flowing downward. And then after a while, something surely changes. They'll likely stop volunteering as often. They'll second guess their abilities. And they'll start devoting more energy trying not to make mistakes instead of trying to make meaningful contributions. Their potential hasn't disappeared. It has simply been pushed into the background. And the worst part is, they may eventually start believing that they were the problem. But all of this isn't only about our work. These same dynamics occur within our friend and peer groups as well. And it's your responsibility to recognize if you're the one causing it or if you're the one who sees it and is allowing it to happen. Because the best leaders and the best teammates have a way of raising the standard while also raising the people around them. That's the kind of influence worth striving for. Because if the people around you start having more confidence in themselves than they did before they interacted with you, then your impact is more important than any work that's being done. And don't forget, the effects of the way we perform doesn't stop with the people we interact with directly. Every environment has habits that no one likely remembers creating. People learn whether mistakes are treated as opportunities or ammunition. They learn whether ideas are welcomed or whether it's better to keep their mouth shut and simply get through the day. Yet most of that, it isn't written anywhere. It's learned through the interactions with the people around them. That's why influence is so much bigger than authority. Everything you do teaches someone what normal looks like. If impatience is normal, people become impatient. If taking all the credit is normal, they'll likely protect what they think is theirs instead of collaborating. And if respect is conditional, trust slowly disappears. Culture is built in the ordinary moments that happen every day. And then before long, what starts as one person's behavior becomes everyone else's habits. Performance without integrity isn't contained to one individual. It changes how everyone else chooses to work or participate. It's why integrity isn't simply a personal virtue, it's a multiplier. When people know they'll be treated with fairness and respect, they contribute more freely. They solve problems together. They invest more of themselves because they believe it means something. Maybe that's the real measure of performance. Not whether you can produce exceptional results on your own, but whether the people around you become more capable because they had the opportunity to work with you. Every one of us leaves an impression that's bigger than the work we produce. Long after people forget the projects or the deadlines, they will remember how they felt working alongside you. They'll remember whether they were encouraged to think on their own, trusted to contribute, and challenged in a way that helped them grow. Or they'll remember becoming dismissed, more hesitant, and more concerned with protecting themselves than doing their best work. That's a legacy we build one interaction at a time. And the thing about integrity is that it doesn't usually earn headlines or awards, but it's found in the small decisions that no one really notices. The moments when giving credit can almost seem unnecessary. When patience takes more effort than frustration, or when treating someone with respect requires more discipline than proving that you're right. Those choices don't always change the outcome of the work today, but they almost always change your relationships tomorrow. Maybe that's why real performance is harder to measure than we realize. It's not just reflected in what gets accomplished. It's reflected in what continues because of us. And this doesn't just happen with those we work with. The true measure of success isn't in what people remember that you achieved. It's what it was like to achieve something with you. And in the end, that may be the standard that's been measuring us all along. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes with me. Until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and keep showing up.